Sometimes courage doesn't come from strength. It comes from the smallest heart that refuses to give up. In the middle of a wild storm, a gentle deer lay trapped under a fallen tree. Thunder roared above, and rain poured like endless tears from the sky. The tree that once gave her shade had now become her cage. She tried to move, but the heavy branches pressed harder against her body. Her breath grew weaker, and her eyes slowly began to close. But somewhere nearby, a tiny squirrel had seen it all. Soaked in the rain, it stood frozen for a moment, trembling with fear. It was small, fragile, and the world around it was crashing in thunder. But even then, it ran toward the fallen tree. The squirrel pushed the branches with its tiny paws. Nothing happened. It tried again, still nothing. But it didn't stop, because sometimes when the heart decides to try, impossible begins to move. It looked around desperately, calling for help in its tiny, squeaky voice. The sound was weak, but filled with hope. And then from a distance, a giant elephant heard that cry. He walked through the rain, his massive feet shaking the muddy ground. When he reached the tree, he looked at the little squirrel, then at the deer trapped below. Without a word, he wrapped his trunk around the fallen branches and lifted them with all his strength. The tree moved. The deer was free again. She took a deep breath, as if life had returned to her soul. The elephant stepped aside, and the deer slowly stood up, but her eyes didn't search for the giant who saved her. They turned to the tiny squirrel, drenched, shivering, but smiling. Because sometimes, heroes don't wear crowns. They come in small shapes, with big hearts. That day, the forest learned a lesson, that kindness doesn't need size, and courage doesn't need strength. It just needs a heart that refuses to give up. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes they're too small to make a difference. Because even the smallest act of courage can change a life.